The words still echo in my mind like broken glass cutting through silk. Jessica's just a waste of space. Honestly. All that education and she can't even keep a man or start a family. What's the point of all that success if you're going to die alone? That's what my own mother said about me at our Christmas dinner table, thinking I couldn't hear her from the ladies' room. But what happened next, when my sister's boss stood up and said 5 words that changed everything? Well, that's a story that'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Jessica Martinez, and at 29 I thought I had finally figured out the perfect balance between family duty and personal success. Most people who knew me would say I had it all together. I'd graduated summa cum laude from Arizona State University with my MBA in marketing, landed a coveted position at Phoenix Digital Solutions, and worked my way up to marketing director in just 4 years. My colleagues respected me. My boss trusted me with the biggest clients, and I'd just closed the largest deal in our company's history, bringing in over $2.3 million in new business. Every morning my alarm would sound at 5:30 and I'd roll out of bed in my beautiful 3-bedroom house in the Ahwatukee Foothills. The house was my pride and joy. A contemporary Southwestern-style home with soaring ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the desert sunrise, and a kitchen that would make any chef jealous. I'd purchased it 18 months ago for $485,000, using every penny of my savings for the down payment and stretching my budget to its absolute limit. But it was worth it. The house represented everything I'd worked for, everything I'd achieved on my own. After a quick workout in my home gym, I'd shower, grab my protein smoothie and head out into the Phoenix morning, driving my reliable Honda Accord through the desert landscape toward our Scottsdale office. The commute gave me time to mentally prepare for the day, reviewing client presentations, thinking through marketing strategies, and planning the campaigns that had earned me recognition throughout the Southwest region. My direct reports looked up to me, and I genuinely loved the creative challenge of developing marketing solutions that delivered real results for our clients. Phoenix Digital Solutions occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek glass building in Old Town Scottsdale, and walking through those doors each morning filled me with a sense of purpose and belonging. My office had a view of Camelback Mountain, and I'd decorated it with awards from industry associations, photos from successful product launches, and a small collection of succulents that somehow thrived despite my hectic schedule. My assistant, Maria Santos, would already have my calendar organized, my coffee ready, and any urgent messages prioritized. We worked together like a well-oiled machine, and I knew how fortunate I was to have found not just a job but a career that challenged and fulfilled me. The success I'd built, however, came with a price tag that extended far beyond my mortgage payments and car insurance. What my colleagues didn't see, what the industry magazines that featured my campaigns didn't mention, was the reality waiting for me each evening when I returned to my beautiful home. For the past 18 months, my parents, Robert and Linda Martinez, had been living with me in what was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, while they got back on their feet financially. Dad had lost his job as a warehouse supervisor 2 years ago when the company downsized, and at 58, he'd struggled to find comparable employment. Mom worked part-time at Target, bringing in barely enough to cover her gas and personal expenses. When their apartment lease ended and they couldn't afford the rent increase, they'd turn to me with tears in their eyes and promises that it would just be for a few months, just until Dad found steady work again. How could I say no to my own parent? But temporary had stretched into a year and a half, and I'd gradually become the sole financial provider for not just myself, but for my parents as well. My mortgage payment of $2,100 a month was manageable on my salary, but when you added utilities, groceries for 3 adults, car insurance for vehicles I didn't drive, cell phone bills for phones I didn't use, and medical expenses for conditions I didn't have, my monthly expenses had ballooned to over $4,000 beyond my original budget. Dad spent his days alternating between half-hearted job searches and elaborate home improvement projects that I never asked for and couldn't afford. He'd installed new light fixtures in the guest bathroom, repainted the garage walls, and reorganized my storage closets with the methodical precision of someone who had too much time and too little purpose. Mom had embraced her role as household manager with enthusiasm, rearranging my furniture, redecorating my living spaces, and hosting book club meetings with her friends in what used to be my quiet sanctuary. The most challenging part wasn't the financial burden, though that was substantial. The most difficult aspect was the constant, subtle criticism disguised as concern for my well-being. Every evening I'd come home from 10-hour days at the office, mentally exhausted from client meetings, strategy sessions, and the pressure of managing a team of 7 marketing professionals, only to face questions about why I was working so late, why I didn't have time for family dinners, and why I hadn't found a nice man to settle down with yet. Meanwhile, my younger sister Sarah seemed to effortlessly embody everything our parents valued most. At 26, she'd married her college boyfriend David Chen, worked as an administrative assistant at Chen and Associates Insurance, and lived in a modest apartment in central Phoenix. She didn't make much money, barely $38,000 a year, but she had what our parents considered more important: a husband, a conventional life path, and the promise of grandchildren in the future. Every Sunday, Sarah and David would come over for family dinner, and I'd watch my parents' faces light up as they discussed Sarah's job, her marriage, her plans for the future. They'd ask detailed questions about her work, remember names of her colleagues, and offer enthusiastic support for her smallest achievements. When Sarah mentioned getting a commendation from her supervisor, Dad would beam with pride and call his brother to share the news. When I'd landed the $2.3 million client, the response had been a distracted, "That's nice, honey," followed by immediate questions about whether I'd met any single men at the business networking event. The disparity in treatment had become so routine that I'd learned to expect it, to brace myself for the disappointment of watching my accomplishments minimized while Sarah's were celebrated. But I kept telling myself that parents show love in different ways, that maybe they just worried about my happiness more than my success, that their concern came from a place of caring, even if it felt like criticism. My best friend Ashley Rodriguez had been pointing out the obvious for months. We'd meet for lunch at our favorite restaurant in Old Town Scottsdale, and she'd listen patiently as I recounted the latest family drama, the newest financial demand, or the most recent passive-aggressive comment about my lifestyle choices. Ashley worked in human resources for a tech company downtown, and she had a gift for seeing interpersonal dynamics with clarity that I seemed to lack when it came to my own family. "Cess, they're using you," she'd say, stirring her salad with more force than necessary. "Your parents are adults. They should be contributing something, anything, to the household they're living in, rent-free. And this constant criticism about your personal life is just manipulation designed to keep you feeling guilty and obligated." I'd defend them automatically, explaining Dad's job market challenges, Mom's limited work experience, the tight rental market in Phoenix, the importance of family loyalty. Ashley would nod patiently, but I could see the frustration in her eyes as I made excuses for behavior that, in any other context, I'd recognize as problematic. "You're 30 years old with an MBA and a 6-figure salary," she'd remind me gently. "You've achieved more than most people ever will. The fact that you're not married doesn't make you a failure, and the fact that you're financially supporting your parents doesn't make you a saint. It just makes you someone who's being taken advantage of by people who should be proud of your success, not critical of your choices." But changing family dynamics isn't as simple as recognizing their dysfunction, and I'd learned to compartmentalize my frustration, channeling it into my work where I could control outcomes and measure success in concrete terms. My professional life provided the validation and respect that my family life lacked, and I'd thrown myself into my career with the intensity of someone who had limited outlets for achievement recognition. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd become exceptionally skilled at marketing other people's products and services, creating compelling narratives that highlighted their best features and minimized their weaknesses, while simultaneously accepting a family narrative that cast me as the selfish, career-obsessed daughter who'd somehow missed the point of what really mattered in life. As Christmas approached, I found myself looking forward to the holiday with the same mixture of anticipation and dread that had become my default emotional state when it came to family gathering. This year, however, I'd decided to do something special. Instead of the usual potluck dinner in my dining room, with everyone crowded around my table while I did most of the cooking and all of the cleanup. I'd made reservations at the Phoenician Resort for their Christmas Day dinner service. The Phoenician was Phoenix's most prestigious resort, a luxury property nestled against Camelback Mountain with world-class dining, impeccable service, and an atmosphere that made every meal feel like a special occasion. I'd splurged on a private dining room for our family, complete with a dedicated server, customized menu and elegant holiday decor. The cost was substantial, nearly $1,200 for the 6 of us, but I justified it as my Christmas gift to the family, a way to create beautiful memories without the stress of cooking and hosting. Sarah had asked if she could invite her boss, Michael Thompson, and his wife Jennifer to join us. She'd been working at Chen & Associates for about 6 months, and she'd developed what seemed like a genuine friendship with Michael, who was the regional manager for their insurance division. Sarah had mentioned that Michael and Jennifer didn't have family in Phoenix, and she thought it would be nice to include them in our celebration. I'd agreed readily, happy to see Sarah taking initiative in building professional relationships, and touched by her thoughtfulness toward colleagues who might otherwise spend the holiday alone. What I didn't realize was that Sarah had been telling people at work that she lived in a beautiful house in Ahwatukee, had been using my address on various documents, and had been posting photos from my home on her social media accounts as if she owned the property. I was completely unaware that my sister had been representing herself as more financially successful than she actually was, trading on my achievements to enhance her own professional image. The deception had started small, probably just a casual comment or an exaggerated response to a colleague's question about where she lived. But over the months it had grown into elaborate fiction that positioned Sarah as someone who'd managed to purchase a beautiful home in one of Phoenix's most desirable neighborhoods on an administrative assistant's salary. Her colleagues were impressed by her apparent financial success, and Sarah had basked in their admiration without considering the implications of her lies. Christmas morning dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp winter air that makes Phoenix winters feel like a gift from the desert god. I'd spent the previous evening wrapping presents, preparing small gift bags for Michael and Jennifer, and laying out my outfit for the dinner. I'd chosen a burgundy silk dress that complemented my dark hair and brown eyes, paired with gold jewelry that caught the light beautifully. I wanted to look polished and confident, to represent my family well in the elegant setting I'd chosen for our celebration. Mom had been unusually quiet during the morning, and I'd attributed her subdued mood to holiday stress, or perhaps some concern about meeting Sarah's boss and his wife. Dad had been in an expansive mood, talking about the restaurant with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely had the opportunity to dine at such an upscale establishment. Sarah and David had arrived at our house around noon, and Sarah had been practically vibrating with excitement about the dinner. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The venue and the opportunity to socialize with Michael and Jennifer outside of work. As we drove to the Phoenician, I felt a sense of satisfaction and anticipation. This was exactly the kind of family celebration I'd envisioned when I'd made the reservation months earlier. We'd have elegant food, attentive service, and a beautiful setting that would make the day feel special and memorable. For once I wouldn't be rushing around my kitchen, checking on multiple dishes, or worrying about whether everyone had enough to eat. I could simply enjoy the company of my family and the guests Sarah had invited to join us. The Phoenician's Christmas Day service was everything I'd hoped it would be. Our private dining room was decorated with tasteful holiday arrangements, soft lighting, and crisp white linens that made the space feel both festive and sophisticated. Michael and Jennifer Thompson arrived promptly at our reserved time, and I was immediately struck by how warm and genuine they seemed. Michael was probably in his early 40s, with graying temples and laugh lines that suggested someone who smiled frequently. Jennifer was closer to my age, with auburn hair and the kind of confident demeanor that comes from professional success. As we settled into our seats and began reviewing the menu, I found myself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Michael had interesting perspectives on the insurance industry. Jennifer worked in nonprofit management, and both of them seemed genuinely interested in getting to know our family. The food was exceptional, the service was flawless, and for the first time in months, I felt relaxed and happy during a family gathering. About halfway through the meal, Michael turned to me with a smile and said, Sarah's told us so much about the beautiful home you two share in Ahwatukee. It sounds like a wonderful place. I paused, my fork halfway to my mouth, completely confused by his comment. I'm sorry, what did you say? Your house, Michael continued, apparently not noticing my confusion. Sarah's mentioned what a great investment it was, how much you both love the neighborhood. It's such a nice area, and with the market the way it is, you were smart to buy when you did. The table had gone completely silent, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me as I tried to process what Michael had just said. I think there might be some confusion, I said slowly. Sarah doesn't live with me, she lives in an apartment with Dave. Michael's expression shifted from friendly interest to puzzled concern. Oh, I must have misunderstood. Sarah, didn't you mention that you and Jessica purchased a home together? I thought you said you lived in Ahwatukee. Sarah's face had gone completely white, and she was staring at her plate as if it might provide some escape from the conversation. I thought there might have been some miscommunication, she said quietly. Actually, Michael continued, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. I remember, you gave me your address for the office emergency contact list, and I recognized it because my wife and I looked at houses in that neighborhood last year. Beautiful area. Those homes aren't cheap. I was impressed that you'd managed to buy there on your salary. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Sarah had been using my address, claiming to live in my house, and representing herself as a homeowner to her colleagues. The realization hit me like a physical blow, and I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment and anger. Sarah, I said, my voice carefully controlled, what exactly did you tell people at work about where you live? Before Sarah could answer, Mom jumped into the conversation with a nervous laugh. Oh, you know how these things get mixed up. The girls are so close, they're practically like roommates anyway. But Michael wasn't letting it go. I'm confused, he said, looking between Sarah and me. Sarah, you listed Jessica's address as your home address on your employment paperwork. If you don't live there, that's a problem for our insurance coverage and legal liability. Dad cleared his throat loudly. Maybe we should discuss this later, as a family. No, I said firmly, my voice growing stronger. I think we should clear this up right now. Michael, I purchased my house 18 months ago, and I live there with my parents. Sarah has never lived there, never contributed to the mortgage, and certainly, never purchased the property with me. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer looked uncomfortable, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. David was staring at his wife with an expression of hurt, confusion. My parents were exchanging glances that seemed to communicate volumes without words. Michael cleared his throat diplomatically. Well, this is awkward. Sarah, we'll need to discuss this at work. Providing false information on employment documents is a serious issue. She owns this place, Michael said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Jessica owns the house. I remember now from the neighborhood research we did. The property records show Jessica Martinez as the sole owner. Sarah, you've been telling people you own a house that belongs to your sister. The words hung in the air like a judgment, and I felt every eye in the room turn toward me with a mixture of surprise, confusion, and something that might have been respect. For the first time in my adult life, someone had publicly acknowledged my achievement, had recognized my success in front of my family, had stated clearly and unequivocally that I was the one who had worked and sacrificed and succeeded. Is that true? Jennifer asked gently, looking at me with newfound interest. You own that beautiful house in Ahwatukee? Yes, I said, my voice steady despite the emotional turmoil churning inside me. I purchased it 18 months ago. I live there with my parents, who moved in temporarily when Dad lost his job. That's incredible, Jennifer said warmly. At your age, to be able to afford a home in that neighborhood, you must be doing very well in your career. And that's when my mother decided to share her real opinion of my success. Well, it's not like she has anything else to spend her money on, Mom said with a bitter laugh. No husband, no children, no real responsibility. It's easy to buy expensive things when you're selfish enough to put yourself first all the time. The words hit me like a slap across the face, and I felt the familiar sting of tears threatening to spill over. But before I could respond, Michael Thompson did something that changed everything. I'm sorry, Mrs. Martinez, he said, his voice polite but firm, but I have to disagree with you completely. Jessica has clearly worked incredibly hard to achieve what she has. Homeownership at her age, especially in that market, is an impressive accomplishment that requires discipline, intelligence, and financial responsibility. Those are admirable qualities, not selfish ones. And, he continued, his voice gaining strength, the fact that she's supporting her parents financially while they live in her home shows remarkable generosity and family loyalty. I'm not sure how you can characterize that as selfish. Jennifer nodded emphatically. Absolutely. Jessica, you should be proud of what you've accomplished, and it's clear that you've been incredibly generous with your family. I felt something shift inside me, a recognition and validation that I'd been craving for years without even realizing. Here were two strangers, people who'd known me for less than 2 hours, who could see and appreciate my achievements in a way that my own family never had. Thank you, I said quietly, my voice thick with emotion. That means more than you know. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, we should probably get going. Long day, you know. But Michael wasn't finished. Actually, I have a question. Sarah, I need to understand the situation with your address. Are you currently living at Jessica's house or not? No, Sarah said miserably. I live in an apartment with David. I used Jessica's address because you wanted people to think you were more successful than you actually are. I finished for her, the pieces finally clicking into place. You've been using my house, my achievement, to enhance your professional reputation. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Jessica. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just started as a little thing, and then it got complicated. A little thing? I repeated, my voice rising slightly. Sarah, you committed fraud. You provided false information to your employer, you've been lying to your colleagues, and you've been taking credit for something you had nothing to do with. That's a bit harsh, Dad said defensively. She made a mistake, but she's family. And what am I asked, the question coming out more forcefully than I'd intended. Am I not family too? Because from where I'm sitting, it seems like I'm the one who's been supporting this family financially for the past 18 months, while being criticized and dismissed for my choices. Mom's face flushed with anger. Jessica, that's enough. You're being dramatic. Am I? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Let me tell you what's dramatic. Dramatic is working 60-hour weeks to pay for a house that 3 other people live in rent-free. Dramatic is covering every single household expense, while being told I'm selfish for not having a husband. Dramatic is watching my sister lie about my achievements to impress her coworkers, while my own parents act like my success is somehow embarrassing. The dining room had gone completely silent, except for the sound of my voice, and I realized that 18 months of frustration and hurt were finally finding their outlet. You want to know what's really dramatic? I continued, my voice shaking but determined. What's dramatic is that it took a stranger, someone I met 2 hours ago, to publicly acknowledge that I've accomplished something worth recognizing. What's dramatic is that my own family sees my success as a source of shame, rather than pride. Michael and Jennifer were clearly uncomfortable, but they remained seated, perhaps sensing that this conversation needed to happen. Jessica, Mom said, her voice taking on the placating tone she used when she wanted to end an argument. You know we're proud of you. We just worry about your priorities. My priorities? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. My priorities have been supporting my family for the past 18 months. My priorities have been making sure you and Dad have a roof over your heads, food on the table, and health insurance. My priorities have been sacrificing my own financial goals to take care of the people I love. And we appreciate that, Dad said quietly. But there's more to life than money and career success. You're right, I said, my voice becoming calmer but more resolved. There is more to life than money and career success. There's also respect, and honesty, and treating the people you love with dignity. And I'm not getting any of those things from this family. I turned to Michael and Jennifer, who were watching the scene unfold with expressions of sympathy and concern. I want to apologize for this situation. You didn't sign up for family drama when you accepted Sarah's invitation. Don't apologize, Jennifer said firmly. You have nothing to apologize for, and honestly, I think you're handling this with remarkable grace. What I don't understand, Michael said, looking at my parents with confusion, is why you're not celebrating Jessica's success. She's clearly worked hard to achieve what she has, and she's been incredibly generous with her family. In my experience, those are qualities that deserve recognition, not criticism. You don't understand our family dynamics, Mom said defensively. Maybe not, Michael replied. But I understand professional success, and I understand family loyalty, and from what I've observed today, Jessica has demonstrated both in remarkable ways. I felt a surge of gratitude toward this man, who barely knew me, but had somehow managed to see and articulate what my own family couldn't, or wouldn't acknowledge. Thank you, I said to Michael and Jennifer, and I'm sorry that Sarah's dishonesty has created a professional problem for you. She'll need to correct her employment records immediately. We'll handle that appropriately, Michael said diplomatically. Sarah, we'll need to have a conversation first thing Monday morning about updating your information and discussing the implications of the discrepancy. Sarah nodded miserably, clearly understanding that her professional reputation had been damaged along with her family relationships. As we prepared to leave the restaurant, I realized that something fundamental had shifted in my understanding of my family dynamics and my place within them. For the first time in my adult life, I'd heard my achievements acknowledged and celebrated by people who weren't obligated to love me. I'd seen my generosity recognized as generosity rather than dismissed as selfishness. And I'd witnessed my family's treatment of me through the eyes of outsiders who found it as problematic as I'd always suspected it was. The drive home was silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional direction from my GPS. I stared out the window at the familiar Phoenix landscape, the palm trees and desert mountains that had been the backdrop for my entire adult life, and felt a strange sense of detachment from it all. When we arrived at my house that I'd purchased and maintained, and shared with people who saw my success as a source of shame, rather than pride, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible just a few hours earlier. I need some time to think, I announced as everyone prepared to go inside. I'm going to stay at Ashley's tonight. Jessica, don't be ridiculous, Mom said. It's Christmas Day. We can work this out, can we? I asked. Because I've been trying to work it out for 18 months, and all I've gotten is criticism and judgment, and now discovery that my own sister has been lying about my accomplishments to advance her career. That's not fair, Sarah said, her voice thick with tears. I made a mistake, but I never meant to hurt you. Intent doesn't change impact, I replied, echoing something Ashley had said to me months earlier. And the impact of your actions, combined with the impact of Mom and Dad's attitudes, has been to make me feel like my success is something to be ashamed of, rather than proud of. I gathered my purse and keys, kissed David goodbye because he truly was an innocent bystander in this situation, and headed for my car. Where are you going? Dad called after me. To spend the evening with someone who thinks my achievements are worth celebrating, I said without turning around. As I drove through the quiet Phoenix streets, toward Ashley's apartment, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The family dinner I'd planned and paid for as a gesture of love and generosity had become the catalyst for a confrontation that had been building for months. And while the immediate aftermath was painful, I couldn't deny that there was also relief in finally having the truth acknowledged, even if it had taken strangers to make it happen. Ashley was surprised to see me at her door on Christmas evening, but she took one look at my face and immediately invited me in without question. As I settled onto her couch with a cup of tea and began to recount the events of the day, I realized that this Christmas dinner had given me something I hadn't expected: clarity about my worth, my achievements, and the kind of relationships I deserved to have in my life. So what happens now? Ashley asked after I'd finished the story. Now, I said, feeling more certain than I had in months, I figure out how to build a life that honors my success instead of apologizing for it. Outside Ashley's window, the Phoenix lights twinkled like scattered diamonds against the desert darkness, and for the first time in 18 months, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The week following Christmas felt like living in a snow globe that someone had shaken violently and then abandoned to settle on its own. I'd extended my stay at Ashley's apartment, sleeping on her comfortable sectional sofa and trying to process the emotional earthquake that had fractured my family relationships in the space of a single dinner conversation. Ashley had been incredibly gracious about the unexpected houseguest, clearing space in her bathroom for my toiletries, and insisting that I stay as long as I needed to figure out my next steps. Monday morning brought the inevitable return to Phoenix Digital Solutions, and I found myself grateful for the familiar routine of checking emails, reviewing campaign analytics, and preparing for client meetings. Work had always been my sanctuary, the place where my efforts were recognized and valued, where results mattered more than personal relationships or family dynamics. My colleagues greeted me with their usual professional warmth, asking about my holiday in the casual way that coworkers do, and I offered vague responses about family time and good food without mentioning the drama that had unfolded at the Phoenician. Maria Santos, my trusted assistant, had organized my schedule with her typical efficiency, but I could tell she sensed something was different about my demeanor. Maria had worked with me for 3 years, and she'd developed an intuitive understanding of my moods and stress levels. When she brought me my morning coffee, she lingered by my desk with the expression of someone who wanted to ask questions but wasn't sure if they'd be welcome. "Everything okay, Jessica?" she asked finally, her voice gentle but concerned. "You seem a little off today." I considered brushing off her concern with a standard response about holiday exhaustion, but something about her genuine care made me pause. Maria had always been more than just an assistant. She'd become a trusted ally and friend, someone who understood the pressures of my role, and often provided practical support that went far beyond her job description. "Family stuff," I said finally, offering her a weak smile. "You know how holidays can be complicated." Maria nodded knowingly. "If you need to talk, I'm here, and if you need extra support with anything this week, just let me know. I can reschedule some of your less urgent meetings if you need breathing room." Her offer of practical help without prying questions was exactly what I needed, and I felt a rush of gratitude for having someone in my professional life who understood how to provide support without adding pressure. It was a stark contrast to the emotional minefield that my family relationships had become. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm of client calls, strategy reviews, and campaign planning, but I found my concentration fragmented by intrusive thoughts about the Christmas dinner revelation and its aftermath. Every time I tried to focus on quarterly projections or creative briefs, my mind would drift back to the moment when Michael Thompson had publicly acknowledged my homeownership, while my own mother had dismissed my achievements as selfish indulgence. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed with a text message from Sarah. "Can we talk? I know you're angry, but I want to explain what happened." I never meant for things to go this far. I stared at the message for several minutes, debating whether to respond immediately or wait until I had more emotional distance from the situation. Part of me wanted to hear her explanation, to understand how she'd rationalized using my address and claiming credit for my house purchase. But another part of me worried that engaging with her would lead to the same pattern of conflict and reconciliation that had characterized our relationship for years. Instead of responding to Sarah's text, I decided to call Ashley during my lunch break. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright with the energy of someone who'd had a productive morning at her own job. "How's the first day back in the office?" she asked immediately, skipping over pleasantries in the way that close friends do. "Surreal," I admitted, settling into my office chair and looking out at the view of Camelback Mountain. "It feels strange to be back to normal work routine when everything else in my life feels upside down." "That's actually healthy," Ashley said, her HR background evident in her response. "Work can provide stability and continuity when personal relationships are in flux. It's okay to compartmentalize for a while." "Sarah texted me this morning," I said, reading her message aloud. "She wants to talk and explain what happened." Ashley was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear her choosing her words carefully. "What do you want to do? Are you ready to hear her explanation? Or do you need more time to process what happened?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Part of me wants to understand her reasoning, but I'm also afraid that talking to her will just lead to more excuses and manipulation. I'm tired of being the one who always has to be understanding and forgiving. "Then don't be," Ashley said firmly. "You're not obligated to make this easy for her, Jessica," she lied to her employer. used your achievements to enhance her reputation, and participated in a family dynamic that consistently diminished your success. You have every right to take time to decide how you want to handle this. Her words gave me permission to prioritize my own emotional needs over my family's expectations, something I'd rarely allowed myself to do in the past. For so long, I'd been the family member who smoothed over conflicts, who made excuses for problematic behavior, who sacrificed my own comfort to maintain harmony. But the Christmas dinner revelation had shattered my willingness to continue that pattern. I think I need to focus on work for a while, I said finally. Let myself have some space to think without the pressure of family drama. That sounds like a healthy plan, Ashley agreed, and remember you're welcome to stay with me as long as you need. No pressure, no timeline. After ending the call with Ashley, I turned my attention back to my computer screen, where a dozen unread emails awaited my attention. The familiar rhythm of client communications, internal strategy discussions, and project updates felt like a refuge from the emotional chaos of my personal life. Here, in the professional world I'd worked so hard to build, my contributions were valued and my success was celebrated rather than criticized. The afternoon brought a scheduled meeting with my direct reports, the team of marketing professionals who managed various aspects of our client campaign. These weekly meetings were typically energizing for me, providing an opportunity to review progress, strategize solutions, and mentor younger colleagues, who reminded me of my own career development. Today, however, I found myself struggling to maintain my usual level of engagement and enthusiasm. Tom Bradley, our social media specialist, was presenting analytics from a recent campaign when I realized I'd been staring at the conference room table for several minutes without processing anything he'd said. The recognition of my distraction was alarming. I'd always prided myself on being fully present during team meetings, giving my colleagues the attention and feedback they deserved. "I'm sorry, Tom," I interrupted, forcing myself to focus on his presentation. "Could you repeat the engagement metrics for the December campaign?" Tom looked slightly confused but repeated the information, and I forced myself to engage with the discussion, asking relevant questions, and providing strategic input. But I was acutely aware of how much effort it required to maintain my professional composure when my personal life felt like it was disintegrating. After the meeting, Maria approached me with a concerned expression. "Jessica, I don't want to overstep, but you seem really distracted today. Is there anything I can do to help?" Her direct question caught me off guard, and I felt my carefully maintained professional facade beginning to crack. "It's been a difficult few days," I admitted, surprised by my own honesty. "Family issues that are affecting my concentration more than I expected." Maria nodded, understanding. "Would it help if I rescheduled some of your less critical meetings this week? You've got that big presentation for the Morrison account on Friday, and I know you'll want to be at your best for that." The Morrison account was indeed significant, a potential new client that could bring in substantial revenue for Phoenix Digital Solutions. The presentation represented months of preparation and strategy development, and I knew that landing this account would be crucial for my continued advancement within the company. "That would be helpful," I said gratefully. "Maybe push back the routine check-ins and focus on the essential meeting." "Consider it done," Maria said efficiently. "And Jessica, whatever's going on with your family, remember that you've built something really impressive here. Don't let personal drama diminish what you've accomplished professionally." Her words echoed the validation I'd received from Michael Thompson at the Christmas dinner, and I felt a surge of appreciation for the colleagues who could see and acknowledge my professional success without the complicated emotional baggage that seemed to cloud my family's perception. The remainder of the afternoon passed more smoothly, with Maria's schedule adjustments providing breathing room for me to focus on strategic planning rather than reactive meetings. By 5 o'clock I felt more centered and capable than I had all day, reminded of how much satisfaction I derived from my professional achievements and the respect of my colleagues. As I prepared to leave the office, my phone buzzed with another text message, this time from my father. "Jessica, your mother and I want to talk. We think there's been a misunderstanding about Christmas dinner. Can you come home tonight so we can work this out?" The message irritated me in ways I was still learning to recognize and articulate. The characterization of our conflict as a misunderstanding, rather than a legitimate expression of my frustration, felt dismissive and manipulative. The assumption that I should come home immediately to resolve their discomfort without any acknowledgement of my own emotional needs was exactly the kind of family dynamic that had contributed to my growing resentment. Instead of responding immediately, I decided to drive to Ashley's apartment and discuss the message with someone who could provide objective perspective. The Phoenix evening traffic was typically heavy, but I found the familiar routine of navigating the freeway system oddly soothing. Driving had always been thinking time for me, an opportunity to process the day's events and plan my next steps. Ashley's apartment complex was in Old Town Scottsdale, a trendy area filled with restaurants, art galleries, and young professionals who'd been drawn to the desert lifestyle. Her building was modern and well-maintained, with a pool area and fitness center that reflected the active lifestyle many Phoenix residents embraced. I'd always enjoyed visiting her apartment, which was decorated with colorful artwork and comfortable furniture that created a welcoming atmosphere. "How was the first day back?" Ashley asked as she opened the door, immediately reading my expression with the intuition of a close friend. "Complicated," I said, settling onto her familiar sectional sofa. "Work was actually good, grounding in a way I need, but I got text from Sarah and my parents wanting to talk and resolve things." "And how do you feel about that?" Ashley asked, curling up in her favorite armchair with a cup of tea. "Frustrated," I said honestly. Dad characterized the Christmas dinner situation as a misunderstanding, as if my reaction was based on some kind of confusion, rather than a legitimate response to years of problematic treatment. Ashley nodded knowingly. "That's a classic manipulation tactic. Reframe your valid concerns as misunderstandings or overreactions to avoid taking responsibility for their behavior. I keep thinking about what Michael Thompson said," I continued. "He saw my achievements and my generosity clearly, without any of the emotional baggage that seems to cloud my family's perception. It made me realize how much I've been accepting criticism and dismissal that I wouldn't tolerate from anyone else." "That's a huge recognition," Ashley said. "And it's exactly why some distance from the situation is healthy. You're getting clarity about patterns that have been normalized in your family dynamic." We talked for another hour about workplace boundaries, family expectations, and the challenge of maintaining professional focus when personal relationships were in turmoil. Ashley shared stories from her HR experience about employees who'd struggled with similar issues, and I found her perspective both validating and instructive. Around 8 o'clock, I decided to respond to my father's text with a brief message. "I need some time to process what happened. I'll be in touch when I'm ready to talk." The response came within minutes. "Jessica, you're being unreasonable. We're your family, and families work through problems together. Come home tonight." The demanding tone of his message confirmed my decision to maintain distance from the situation. Instead of engaging in a text argument, I turned off my phone and focused on helping Ashley prepare dinner, grateful for the opportunity to contribute to a household where my efforts were appreciated rather than taken for granted. Tuesday morning brought another routine day at Phoenix Digital Solutions, but I found myself paying closer attention to the positive feedback and recognition I received from colleagues and clients. A successful campaign launch generated enthusiastic emails from the client team, praising our strategic approach and creative execution. My supervisor, Jennifer Walsh, stopped by my office to commend my team's performance on a recent project and to discuss potential expansion of my responsibilities. "You've been doing exceptional work this quarter," Jennifer said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "The Morrison presentation on Friday could be a game changer for the company, and I have complete confidence in your ability to land this account." Her words provided the professional validation I'd been craving, and I felt a surge of pride in the career I'd built through hard work and strategic thinking. This was the recognition I deserved, the acknowledgement of my efforts and achievements that had been so notably absent from my family relationships. "Thank you," I said, meaning it deeply. "I'm excited about the opportunity to present our strategy to Morris. I think we've developed a compelling approach that addresses their specific challenges." "I agree," Jennifer said, "and I want you to know that landing this account would position you well for the senior director role we'll be posting next quarter. Your leadership with the team and your client relationship skills have been impressive." The mention of a potential promotion filled me with excitement and determination. Senior director was a position I'd been working toward for years, and the recognition from Jennifer suggested that my professional growth was progressing exactly as I'd hoped. After Jennifer left my office, I spent the morning refining the Morrison presentation, reviewing market research, and rehearsing key talking points. The focused work felt therapeutic, providing a sense of purpose and accomplishment that contrasted sharply with the emotional drain of family conflict. Around noon, Maria knocked on my door with an unusual expression of concern. "Jessica, there's someone here to see you. Your sister is in the lobby, and she's asking if you have a few minutes to talk." My stomach dropped at the unexpected visit. Sarah had never come to my office before, and her presence in my professional space felt like an intrusion that blurred the boundaries I'd been trying to maintain between work and personal drama. "Did she say what she wanted?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just that she wanted to talk to you briefly. She seems upset." I considered asking Maria to tell Sarah I was unavailable, but I realized that avoiding the conversation indefinitely wasn't a sustainable strategy. "Give me 5 minutes, then bring her back to my office." I used the brief time to mentally prepare for the conversation, reminding myself of the professional environment and the need to maintain boundaries regardless of Sarah's emotional state. When Maria escorted Sarah into my office, I was struck by how tired and stressed she looked. Her usually polished appearance was disheveled, and her eyes were red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. "Thank you for seeing me," Sarah said quietly, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I know you're angry, and I know I don't deserve your time, but I needed to explain what happened." "Okay," I said simply, keeping my tone neutral. "I'm listening." Sarah took a deep breath before beginning. "When I started working at Chen & Associates, everyone was talking about their living situations, their homes, their neighborhood. I felt embarrassed about our tiny apartment, about how little money David and I make, about how we're still struggling with student loans while everyone else seemed so successful." She paused, clearly struggling with the admission. "When someone asked where I lived, I mentioned Ahwatukee without thinking about it. I'd been spending so much time at your house for family dinners that it felt familiar, like a neighborhood I knew well, and when they seemed impressed, I didn't correct them." "So you decided to use my address on your employment forms?" I asked, trying to understand her reasoning. "It started as a small thing," Sarah said defensively. "I needed an address for the paperwork, and I thought it would just be temporary until we moved to a better place. But then Michael started talking about the neighborhood, about property values and investment potential, and I realized how much more respect I was getting from my colleagues." "Respect based on a lie," I pointed out. "I know," Sarah said, her voice breaking slightly. "I know it was wrong, and I know I should have corrected it immediately, but it felt so good to be seen as successful, to have people assume I was doing well financially. I've never had that kind of recognition before." Her words revealed a deeper insecurity that I recognized but couldn't excuse. "Sarah, you were using my achievements to enhance your reputation. You were taking credit for something you had no part in creating." "I wasn't taking credit," Sarah protested. "I never said I bought the house or that I was successful. I just let people assume things." "That's still deception," I said firmly, "and it's created a professional problem for you that could have serious consequences." "Michael mentioned that providing false information on employment documents is a serious issue." Sarah's face crumpled. "I know. I have a meeting with him and HR tomorrow morning. I'm probably going to lose my job." Part of me felt sympathy for her distress, but I also recognized that she was facing the natural consequences of her choices. "What did you expect would happen when you decided to lie about where you live?" "I thought I could figure it out before anyone noticed," Sarah said quietly. "I thought maybe David and I would get better jobs, save enough for a down payment, actually move to a nice neighborhood. I thought the lie would eventually become true, but it didn't." "And now you're facing the consequences of building your professional reputation on dishonesty." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Jessica. I never meant to hurt you or damage our relationship. I just wanted to feel successful for once, to have people look at me the way they look at you." Her apology felt genuine, but I also recognized the familiar pattern of emotional manipulation that had characterized our family dynamics for years. Sarah was positioning herself as the victim of her own poor choices, seeking forgiveness and understanding without fully acknowledging the impact of her actions. "I appreciate your apology," I said carefully, "but I need you to understand that this isn't just about the address issue. It's about a larger pattern of family behavior that has made me feel unvalued and unappreciated for years." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, looking genuinely confused. "I mean the way Mom and Dad consistently minimize my achievements while celebrating yours. I mean the way my financial support has been taken for granted while my lifestyle choices have been criticized. I mean the way I've been expected to be endlessly generous and understanding while receiving very little support or recognition in return." Sarah stared at me for a long moment, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "I didn't realize you felt that way." "That's part of the problem," I said. "You've been so focused on your own insecurities that you haven't noticed how the family dynamic has affected me. And when you used my house to enhance your reputation, you participated in that same pattern of taking advantage of my success while dismissing my feelings." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Sarah offering explanations and apologies, while I tried to articulate the cumulative impact of years of problematic family dynamic. By the end of our discussion, I felt emotionally drained but also clearer about my own boundaries and expectations. "I need some time to think about all of this," I told Sarah as she prepared to leave. "I'm not ready to come home or pretend that everything is fine. I need space to figure out how I want to handle this situation." "How long?" Sarah asked. "Mom and Dad are really upset, and they don't understand why you're staying away." "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I need you and them to respect my decision to take time without pressuring me to resolve things on your timeline." After Sarah left, I sat in my office for several minutes, processing the conversation and its implications. Her apology had been genuine, but it hadn't addressed the larger issues that had contributed to my growing dissatisfaction with my family relationships. I realized that I needed to have similar conversations with my parents, but I also knew that I wasn't emotionally ready for those discussions. The remainder of the week passed in a blur of work preparation and emotional processing. I threw myself into finalizing the Morrison presentation, grateful for the opportunity to focus on something I could control and execute successfully. Ashley continued to provide supportive friendship without pressure, and I found myself appreciating the contrast between her approach and my family's demands for immediate resolution. Friday morning arrived with the nervous energy that always preceded important client presentation. I'd rehearsed my talking points, prepared for potential questions, and coordinated with my team to ensure seamless execution. The Morrison account represented a significant opportunity for Phoenix Digital Solutions, and I was determined to deliver a presentation that would showcase our capabilities and strategic thinking. The meeting took place in our largest conference room, with the Morrison team participating via video conference from their Los Angeles headquarters. Jennifer Walsh introduced me as the lead strategist for the account, and I felt a surge of confidence as I began the presentation. For the next hour, I guided the Morrison team through our comprehensive marketing strategy, explaining our research findings, creative concepts, and implementation timeline. Their questions were thoughtful and engaged, and I could sense their growing interest in our approach. By the end of the presentation, I felt cautiously optimistic about our chances of landing the account. "Excellent work, Jessica," Jennifer said after the Morrison team had signed off. "That was exactly the kind of strategic thinking and professional presentation that sets us apart from our competitors." The validation from Jennifer and the positive response from the Morrison team provided the professional satisfaction I'd been seeking all week. This was what I'd worked for, the recognition of my skills and achievements that had been so notably absent from my family relationships. As I packed up my presentation materials, I realized that I'd successfully compartmentalized my personal drama to deliver professional excellence. The ability to maintain focus and performance despite emotional turmoil felt like a significant personal achievement, evidence of the resilience and capability I'd developed through years of navigating challenging circumstances. The weekend stretched ahead with the promise of continued distance from family pressure and the opportunity to continue processing the events of the past week. I had decisions to make about my living situation, my relationship with my parents, and the boundaries I needed to establish for my own emotional well-being. But for now, I was content to focus on the satisfaction of professional success and the support of friends who valued my achievements, without the complicated emotional baggage that had characterized my family relationships for too long. The journey toward clarity and self-advocacy was just beginning, but I felt more confident in my ability to navigate it successfully than I had in years. The following Monday arrived with news that would fundamentally shift the trajectory of my career and personal life. I was reviewing quarterly reports when Jennifer Walsh knocked on my office door, her expression carrying the kind of controlled excitement that preceded significant announcements. "Jessica, do you have a few minutes?" she asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. "I have some excellent news about the Morrison account." My heart rate quickened with anticipation. The presentation had gone well, but in the competitive world of marketing, positive client feedback didn't always translate to signed contracts. I'd learned to temper my expectations while remaining hopeful about potential outcomes. "They loved the presentation," Jennifer continued, unable to suppress her smile. "More than that, they were impressed with your strategic thinking and the depth of research your team provides. They're moving forward with a full-service contract worth $2.8 million over the next 2 years. The magnitude of the news hit me like a physical force. $2.8 million represented the largest account I'd ever secured, a career-defining achievement that would significantly impact Phoenix Digital Solutions' revenue and my own professional standing within the company. "That's incredible," I managed, feeling a surge of pride and accomplishment that momentarily overshadowed the family drama that had dominated my thoughts for the past week. "I'm thrilled that they see the value in our approach." "There's more," Jennifer said, leaning forward with obvious enthusiasm. "The Morrison win, combined with your consistent performance over the past year, has accelerated our timeline for the senior director position. We'd like to offer you the promotion immediately along with a salary increase to $115,000 annually." The offer exceeded my most optimistic expectation. Senior director was a position I'd been working toward for years, and the salary increase would provide even greater financial security and independence. More importantly, the promotion represented recognition of my capabilities and contributions at the highest levels of the company. "I accept," I said without hesitation, feeling a rush of validation that contrasted sharply with the criticism and dismissal I'd experienced from my family. "Thank you for this opportunity. I'm excited about the increased responsibilities and the chance to contribute to the company's growth." "Excellent," Jennifer said, standing to shake my hand. "We'll make the announcement this afternoon, and you'll start transitioning into the new role immediately. You've earned this, Jessica. Your dedication and strategic thinking have been exceptional." After Jennifer left my office, I sat in stunned silence for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. In the span of a single conversation, my professional trajectory had shifted dramatically, providing both financial security and career advancement that represented years of hard work and strategic planning. The timing of the promotion felt almost surreal, coming just days after my family had dismissed my achievements as selfish indulgences. Here was concrete evidence of my value and capabilities, recognition from industry professionals who understood the complexity and importance of my work. The contrast between my family's perception and my professional reality had never been more stark. I called Ashley immediately, needing to share the news with someone who would understand its significance and celebrate my success without reservation or qualification. "Jessica, that's incredible," Ashley exclaimed, her voice filled with genuine excitement. "Senior director at your age, with that kind of salary increase, that's absolutely remarkable. You should be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." "I am," I said, surprised by the certainty in my own voice. For the first time in months, I feel genuinely proud of my achievements without any guilt or self-doubt. "That's exactly how you should feel," Ashley said firmly. You've worked incredibly hard for this promotion, and you deserve every bit of recognition you're receiving. This is what success looks like, and you've earned it completely. The conversation with Ashley reinforced my growing clarity about the value of surrounding myself with people who could recognize and celebrate my achievements without the complicated emotional baggage that characterized my family relationship. Her immediate enthusiastic support provided the validation I'd been seeking, confirmation that my professional success was indeed worthy of recognition and pride. The afternoon brought the official announcement of my promotion, and I was overwhelmed by the positive response from colleagues throughout the company. Email messages flooded my inbox with congratulations and expressions of support, while team members stopped by my office to offer their enthusiasm for my advancement. The response was unanimous and genuine, providing further evidence of the respect I'd earned through consistent performance and strategic thinking. Tom Bradley, our social media specialist, knocked on my door around 3 o'clock with a broad smile and a small celebratory plant for my desk. "Congratulations, Jessica. This promotion is so well deserved. You've been an incredible mentor and leader for all of us." "Thank you, Tom," I said, genuinely touched by his thoughtfulness. "I'm looking forward to the new challenges and opportunities to support the team's continued growth." "We're all excited to work with you in this new capacity," Tom continued. "Your strategic vision and leadership style have made such a positive impact on our campaigns and client relationships." Similar conversations occurred throughout the afternoon, with colleagues expressing their support and excitement about my advancement. The unanimous positive response provided powerful confirmation of my professional value and the respect I'd earned through years of dedicated work. As evening approached, I found myself facing a decision about how to handle the news with my family. Part of me wanted to share the promotion and salary increase as evidence of my success and worth, while another part recognized that past experience suggested they would find ways to minimize or criticize even this significant achievement. The internal debate continued as I drove to Ashley's apartment, where I'd been staying while maintaining distance from the family drama. The familiar Phoenix landscape looked different somehow, as if my professional success had shifted my perspective on the city and my place within it. I felt more grounded and confident than I had in months, secure in the knowledge that my work was valued and my contributions were recognized. Ashley was waiting with a bottle of champagne and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant, having anticipated that my promotion deserved a proper celebration. We settled onto her sectional sofa with our food and drinks, and I found myself able to enjoy the moment without the anxiety and self-doubt that had characterized my emotional state since the Christmas dinner revelation. "So what's your plan for handling this news with your family?" Ashley asked, reading my thoughts with the intuition of a close friend. "I'm not sure," I admitted, sipping the champagne and considering my options. "Part of me wants to tell them about the promotion as proof that my career focus has been worthwhile, but I'm also afraid they'll find ways to minimize it or turn it into another criticism about my personal life." "What would you want their reaction to be?" Ashley asked, her HR training evident in the strategic question. "I want them to be proud," I said simply. "I want them to recognize that this promotion represents years of hard work and strategic thinking. I want them to see my success as something to celebrate rather than something to criticize. And if they don't react that way..." The question hung in the air between us, and I realized that I already knew the answer. Based on years of experience with my family's responses to my achievements, I had little reason to expect genuine celebration or recognition of my success. "Then I'll know where I stand," I said finally, "and I'll be able to make decisions about my relationships based on reality rather than hope." We spent the evening discussing career goals, professional development, and the satisfaction of achieving recognition for hard work and strategic thinking. The conversation reinforced my growing confidence in my abilities and my right to expect respect and support from the people in my life. The next morning brought a text message from my mother that would test my resolve to maintain boundaries while sharing significant news. "Jessica, we need to talk about this situation. You've been gone for over a week, and your father and I are worried about you. Come home tonight so we can discuss things like adults." The demanding tone of her message, combined with the implication that I was behaving childishly by maintaining distance, triggered the familiar pattern of guilt and obligation that had characterized my family relationships for years. But this time, I felt equipped with the confidence and clarity that came from recent professional success and external validation. Instead of responding immediately, I decided to focus on my work responsibilities and process the promotion logistics that would occupy much of my attention over the next few weeks. The new role would involve expanded client management, strategic planning for the company's growth, and leadership responsibilities that would challenge and fulfill me in ways I'd been anticipating for years. Maria Santos knocked on my door around 10 o'clock with a stack of documents related to my transition into the senior director role. "Congratulations again, Jessica," she said warmly. "I'm so excited to support you in this new capacity. You've earned this advancement completely." "Thank you, Maria," I said, grateful for her consistent support and professional competence. "I'm looking forward to the new challenges and opportunities to contribute to the company's success." "Jennifer asked me to coordinate your transition schedule," Maria continued, settling into the chair across from my desk. "We'll need to reallocate some of your current responsibilities while adding the strategic planning and client development functions that come with the senior director role." The logistics of my promotion provided welcome distraction from family drama and allowed me to focus on professional growth and development. For the next several hours, I worked with Maria to organize my new responsibilities, schedule meetings with key clients, and plan strategic initiatives that would define my early success in the advanced role. Around noon, I received an unexpected call from Michael Thompson, Sarah's boss from Chen & Associates Insurance. His name appeared on my caller ID, and I felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension about his purpose for contacting me. "Jessica, I hope I'm not interrupting your workday," Michael said, his voice carrying the professional courtesy I remembered from our brief Christmas dinner interaction. "I wanted to follow up on the situation that arose during our dinner and discuss some related matters." "Of course," I said, uncertain about the direction of the conversation but interested in his perspective on the events that had unfolded. "First, I want to apologize for the awkward situation at dinner," Michael continued. "I had no idea that my comments about your home ownership would reveal information that created family conflict. That was never my intention." "You don't need to apologize," I assured him. "Your comments were perfectly reasonable, and you couldn't have known about the deception involved. If anything, I'm grateful that the truth came out." "I'm glad you feel that way," Michael said, his voice warming slightly. "I've been thinking about our conversation and your family's reaction to your obviously significant professional and personal achievement. Their response was concerning to me, both as someone who values success and as someone who's built a career on recognizing talent and capability." His words provided unexpected validation from someone who'd witnessed the family dynamics firsthand and found them as problematic as I had. The external perspective reinforced my growing clarity about the unhealthy patterns that had characterized my relationships with my parents. "I appreciate your concern," I said carefully. "It's been a challenging situation to navigate." "I can imagine," Michael replied. "Which brings me to the main reason for my call. I've been discussing the situation with my wife Jennifer, and we're both impressed with your professional accomplishments and personal integrity. We'd like to invite you to dinner this weekend, without the complications of family drama, to get to know you better as an individual." The invitation surprised me with its thoughtfulness and timing. Michael and Jennifer had witnessed my family's dismissive treatment of my success, and they were offering friendship and recognition that seemed to be based on genuine respect for my achievements. "That's very kind of you," I said, feeling touched by their offer. "I'd enjoy the opportunity to get to know you both better under more relaxed circumstances." "Excellent," Michael said. "Jennifer suggested Saturday evening at North Italia in Scottsdale. She's been wanting to try their seasonal menu, and we thought it would provide a nice setting for conversation." After finalizing the dinner plans, I found myself reflecting on the contrast between Michael and Jennifer's approach and my family's expectations. Here were two people who'd known me for a matter of hours, but could recognize and appreciate my achievements, while my parents and sister seemed incapable of providing the same recognition, despite years of relationship and support. The remainder of the afternoon passed quickly with transition planning and client communication related to my promotion. By 5 o'clock I felt energized and accomplished, ready to celebrate my professional success with people who could appreciate its significance without reservation or criticism. As I prepared to leave the office, I made a decision about responding to my mother's text message. Instead of engaging with her demand for immediate resolution, I would focus on the positive developments in my life and the relationships that provided genuine support and validation. I texted her a brief message: "I have some exciting professional news to share when I'm ready to talk. I'm still processing the events of Christmas dinner and need more time before we can have a productive conversation." The response came within minutes: "What kind of professional news? Are you finally ready to discuss your behavior and come home where you belong?" Her inability to express interest in my achievement without immediately shifting to criticism and demands confirmed my decision to maintain distance until I felt emotionally prepared to handle her predictable response pattern. Instead of responding further, I drove to Ashley's apartment, where I spent the evening planning my transition into the senior director role and discussing the unexpected dinner invitation from Michael and Jennifer. The conversation reinforced my growing confidence in my ability to build relationships based on mutual respect and appreciation, rather than obligation and criticism. "It sounds like they see you clearly," Ashley observed as we discussed the invitation. "They witnessed your family's treatment of you and want to offer genuine friendship based on who you are and what you've accomplished. It feels strange to be valued by people who barely know me while struggling to get recognition from my own family," I admitted, "but also validating in a way I wasn't expecting." "That's not strange at all," Ashley said firmly. "Sometimes people outside our family dynamics can see us more clearly than those who are invested in maintaining problematic patterns. Michael and Jennifer don't have emotional baggage that prevents them from appreciating your success." The week continued with intensive focus on my new responsibilities and the strategic planning that would define my early success as senior director. The promotion had provided both financial security and professional validation that contrasted sharply with the criticism and dismissal I'd experienced from my family. Thursday brought another text from my father, this one more demanding than previous messages. "Jessica, this has gone on long enough. You're being selfish and immature. Your family needs you, and you have responsibilities that you're ignoring. Come home immediately." The authoritative tone and guilt-inducing language represented exactly the kind of manipulation I'd been learning to recognize and resist. Instead of responding with explanations or justifications, I simply deleted the message and focused on preparing for Friday's client meeting. Friday afternoon brought confirmation that my decision to maintain boundaries was appropriate and necessary. Sarah appeared at my office again, this time looking even more distressed than during her previous visit. "Jessica, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk with obvious anxiety. "What's going on?" I asked, noting her distressed appearance and anticipating another family-related crisis. "I met with Michael and HR on Tuesday," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're not firing me, but they're putting me on probation and requiring me to update all my employment information. I have to provide proof of my actual address and explain why I gave false information initially." "That seems reasonable," I said, unsurprised by the professional consequences of her dishonesty. "Providing false information on employment documents is a serious matter, but that's not the worst part," Sarah continued. "Michael told me that he's been discussing the situation with his wife, and they're both concerned about how Mom and Dad treated you at Christmas dinner. He said their behavior was inappropriate, and that they failed to recognize your achievements properly." The news that Michael had been discussing my family situation with his wife created a mixture of embarrassment and validation. While I felt uncomfortable about becoming the subject of their private conversations, I also appreciated that they'd recognized the problematic nature of my family's treatment. "What did you tell him?" I asked, curious about Sarah's response to his observation. "I tried to explain that Mom and Dad were just stressed about the address situation, and that they didn't mean to be dismissive of your success, Sarah. But Michael said that their response had nothing to do with the address issue, and everything to do with their failure to appreciate your generosity and achievement." "He's right," I said simply, no longer willing to make excuses for my parents' behavior or to minimize the impact of their consistent criticism and dismissal. "Jessica, I think you're being too hard on them," Sarah said, reverting to the familiar pattern of defending our parents despite evidence of their problematic behavior. They love you and they're worried about you. This situation is tearing the family apart. I'm not tearing the family apart, I replied firmly. I'm simply declining to continue accepting treatment that undermines my self-worth and dismisses my achievement. If that creates family conflict, then we need to address the underlying issues rather than pressuring me to return to an unhealthy dynamic. But they're your parents, Sarah protested, using the guilt-inducing language that had been effective in the past, but no longer carried the same emotional weight. Being my parents doesn't give them the right to treat me with disrespect or to minimize my success. I've supported them financially and emotionally for years, and I deserve recognition and appreciation for those contributions, rather than criticism and dismissal. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Sarah attempting to mediate between my position and our parents' expectations. By the end of our discussion, I felt even more certain that maintaining boundaries was necessary for my emotional well-being and professional focus. Saturday evening arrived with the anticipation of dinner with Michael and Jennifer, an opportunity to engage with people who could appreciate my achievements without the complicated emotional baggage that characterized my family relationship. I chose a sophisticated black dress and gold accessories, wanting to present myself as the confident professional I'd become rather than the conflicted daughter I'd been for too long. North Italia in Scottsdale was exactly the kind of upscale but comfortable restaurant that encouraged relaxed conversation and genuine connection. Michael and Jennifer were already seated when I arrived, and their warm greeting reinforced my sense that this dinner would provide the recognition and validation I'd been seeking. "Jessica, you look wonderful," Jennifer said, embracing me warmly. "We've been looking forward to this evening all week. Thank you for inviting me," I said, settling into my chair and appreciating the elegant atmosphere of the restaurant. "It's been a challenging week, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to spend time with people who understand professional success." "We heard about your promotion," Michael said, raising his wine glass in a toast. "Senior director at your age, with that kind of responsibility and salary increase, that's absolutely remarkable. You should be incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." The recognition and celebration of my achievement provided exactly the validation I'd been craving from my family, but had never received. Here were two people who understood the significance of my promotion and could appreciate it without reservation or criticism. "Thank you," I said, feeling genuinely honored by their recognition. "It represents years of hard work and strategic thinking, and I'm excited about the opportunities it will provide." "Your family should be celebrating your success," Jennifer said, her expression serious. "The way they responded to your achievements at Christmas dinner was completely inappropriate. You deserve recognition and support, not criticism and dismissal." Their direct acknowledgement of my family's problematic behavior provided the external validation I'd needed to confirm that my perceptions were accurate, and my decision to maintain boundaries was appropriate. The evening progressed with engaging conversation about career development, professional goals, and the satisfaction of achieving recognition for hard work and strategic thinking. Michael and Jennifer shared stories from their own career journeys, providing perspective and encouragement that reinforced my confidence in my abilities and my right to expect respect and appreciation from the people in my life. As the evening concluded, I felt more grounded and confident than I had in months, secure in the knowledge that my achievements were worthy of recognition and that I deserved relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation and criticism. The contrast between this dinner and the Christmas meal that had triggered my family crisis was stark and illuminating, providing clarity about the kind of relationships I wanted to cultivate moving forward. The second week of January brought a development that would crystallize my understanding of my family's true priorities and motivations. I was reviewing budget projections for the Morrison account when Maria knocked on my door with an expression of concerned confusion. "Jessica, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing that I thought you should know about immediately," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk with obvious discomfort. "I just received a call from building security. Your parents are in the lobby demanding to see you, and they're becoming increasingly agitated with the reception staff." My stomach dropped at the news, The idea of my parents creating a scene in my professional environment filled me with a combination of embarrassment and anger. I'd worked years to build my reputation at Phoenix Digital Solutions, and the thought of family drama spilling into my workplace was deeply troubling. "What exactly are they saying?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the anxiety building in my chest. "According to security, your father is insisting that you're avoiding your family responsibilities and that he needs to speak with you immediately about urgent financial matters," Maria explained. "He's been raising his voice and claiming that you're being unreasonable and The public nature of their confrontation, combined with the professional setting, represented a boundary violation that I found completely unacceptable. My workplace had been my sanctuary, the one environment where I could focus on my achievements and contributions without the emotional manipulation that characterized my family relationships. "Please ask security to escort them from the building," I said firmly. "Tell them that I'll contact my parents when I'm ready to discuss family matters, but that my office is not an appropriate venue for personal conflicts." "Are you sure?" Maria asked, clearly concerned about the potential escalation. "Your father seemed quite determined to speak with you." "I'm absolutely sure," I replied, feeling more certain about my boundaries than I had in years. "This behavior is inappropriate and unprofessional, and I won't allow it to continue in my workplace." Maria nodded and left to coordinate with security, while I sat in my office processing the implications of my parents' actions. Their decision to confront me publicly at work demonstrated a level of disrespect for my professional life that I found deeply disturbing. They were essentially trying to force a confrontation by creating embarrassment and pressure in the one environment where I felt confident and valued. 20 minutes later, Maria returned with an update that would prove to be even more revealing about my parents' motivations and character. "Security was able to escort your parents from the building, but not before your father made some concerning statements to the reception staff," she said, her expression troubled. "He told them that you were financially supporting him and your mother, and that you were being unreasonable about continuing that support. He also mentioned that you own a house where they live, and that you're threatening to sell it out from under them." The revelation that my father had been discussing our private financial arrangements with strangers, including my colleagues and building staff, felt like a profound violation of privacy and trust. He'd essentially aired our family's financial laundry in my professional environment, creating potential embarrassment and compromising my reputation. "He said all of that to the reception staff?" I asked, feeling a mixture of anger and mortification at his breach of discretion. "Unfortunately, yes," Maria confirmed. "He seemed to believe that if he could generate sympathy for his situation, it would pressure you into meeting with him." The reception staff were very uncomfortable with the level of personal detail he was sharing. The strategic nature of my father's behavior, his calculated attempt to use public embarrassment and guilt to force compliance, revealed a level of manipulation that I'd never fully recognized before. This wasn't desperate parental concern, it was deliberate emotional coercion designed to override my boundaries and force me back into the dysfunctional dynamic that had characterized our relationship. "Thank you for handling this professionally," I said to Maria, grateful for her discreet management of the situation. "I want to make sure this doesn't happen again. Please coordinate with security to ensure that my parents are not allowed access to the building without my explicit approval." "Of course," Maria said immediately. "I'll make sure security has clear instructions about restricting their access." "And Jessica, for what it's worth, everyone who witnessed this situation understood that your parents' behavior was inappropriate and that you handled it with remarkable professionalism." Her words provided some comfort, but I remained deeply troubled by the boundary violation and the potential impact on my professional reputation. The fact that my parents had been willing to create a scene in my workplace suggested a level of desperation and disrespect that I'd never fully appreciated. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of client calls and strategic planning, but I found my concentration repeatedly disrupted by anger and disappointment about my parents' action. The violation of my professional space felt like a particularly cruel betrayal, an attack on the one area of my life where I'd found consistent validation and success. Around noon, I received a call from Ashley, who'd heard about the incident through the professional network that connected various Phoenix companies. "Jessica, I just heard about what happened at your office this morning, she said, her voice filled with concern and anger. Are you okay? I can't believe your parents would create a scene at your workplace. I'm still processing it, I admitted, grateful for her immediate support and understanding. The fact that they would violate my professional environment like that feels like a complete betrayal of boundaries and respect. It absolutely is, Ashley said firmly. What they did was completely inappropriate and showed a shocking lack of respect for your career and reputation. No parent should put their child in that kind of professional jeopardy. The worst part is how calculated it seemed, I continued. My father specifically mentioned our financial arrangements to the reception staff, trying to generate sympathy and pressure me into compliance. It wasn't emotional desperation, it was strategic manipulation. That makes it even worse, Ashley replied. They're essentially trying to use your professional reputation as leverage to force you back into the dysfunctional relationship dynamic. That's not love or concern. That's manipulation and control. The conversation with Ashley helped me process the emotional impact of the morning's events and reinforced my conviction that maintaining boundaries was not only appropriate, but necessary for my emotional well-being and professional integrity. That afternoon brought another unexpected development that would further illuminate the true nature of my family's motivations. I was reviewing campaign analytics when my phone rang with a call from an unknown local number. Jessica Martinez, the caller asked when I answered. Yes, this is Jessica. This is David Chen, Sarah's husband. I'm calling because I need to talk to you about what's been happening with your family, and I think you deserve to know the truth about some things that have been going on. David's voice carried a seriousness that immediately captured my attention. He'd always been peripheral to family drama, present at gatherings but rarely involved in the emotional conflicts that characterized our relationships. What kind of thing? I asked, curious about his perspective and concerned about the implications of his call. Can we meet somewhere to talk in person? David asked. This isn't really a conversation for the phone, and I think you need to hear what I have to say face to face. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in Central Phoenix after I finished work, and I spent the remainder of the afternoon speculating about the nature of his revelation. David had always seemed like a straightforward, honest person, and his request for a private meeting suggested that he had information that would be significant for my understanding of the family situation. The coffee shop was busy with the typical after-work crowd, providing enough ambient noise for private conversation while offering the comfort of a public setting. David arrived looking tired and stressed, his usually neat appearance slightly disheveled in a way that suggested he'd been wrestling with difficult decisions. Thank you for meeting with me, he said, settling into the chair across from me with obvious nervous energy. I've been debating whether to have this conversation for weeks, but after what happened at your office this morning, I knew I had to tell you what I've been observing. I'm listening, I said, preparing myself for whatever revelations he was about to share. Sarah and I have been having a lot of conversations about your family situation, especially since the Christmas dinner incident, David began, his voice careful and measured. She's been upset about the conflict with you, but she's also been sharing information about your parents' behavior that I think you need to know. He paused, clearly struggling with the decision to betray family confidences, before continuing with obvious reluctance. Your parents have been talking to Sarah about their financial situation and their plans for the future, David said. They've been very specific about their expectations regarding your support and their timeline for accessing your resources. What kind of expectation? I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. They've been telling Sarah that they plan to live in your house permanently, that they consider it their retirement home, David explained. They've also been discussing their assumption that you'll continue to support them indefinitely, and they've been making plans based on that assumption. The revelation that my parents had been treating my temporary generosity as a permanent arrangement without any discussion or agreement felt like another profound betrayal. They'd been making long-term plans based on my resources, while simultaneously criticizing my lifestyle and dismissing my achievements. There's more, David continued, his expression growing more troubled. They've been pressuring Sarah to convince you to come home and resume the financial support. They've been coaching her on what to say to you, giving her specific arguments and emotional appeals to you. The news that my parents had been orchestrating Sarah's attempts at reconciliation Turning my sister into an unwitting tool for their manipulation added another layer of betrayal to an already complex situation. Sarah doesn't realize how manipulative their coaching has been. David said. She genuinely believes she's helping to repair family relationships. But she's actually being used to advance your parents' financial agenda. What specific things have they been coaching her to say? I asked, though I was beginning to recognize the patterns in our recent conversation. They've been telling her to emphasize family loyalty, to guilt you about abandoning your responsibilities, and to minimize the significance of their behavior at Christmas dinner, David explained. They've also been coaching her to present their financial situation as more desperate than it actually is. More desperate than it actually is? I repeated, sensing that there was additional information he hadn't yet revealed. David took a deep breath before continuing with his most significant revelation. Jessica, your parents aren't as financially desperate as they've been claiming. Your father has been receiving unemployment benefits, and your mother has been working more hours at Target than she's admitted to. They've also been saving money by living in your house rent-free, and they've been using that savings for things they haven't told you about. What kind of things? I asked, though I was beginning to understand the scope of their deception. They've been taking weekend trips to Sedona, eating at expensive restaurants, and your father bought a new golf club set last month, David said. They've been living a lifestyle that's far more comfortable than what their supposed financial desperation would suggest. The revelation that my parents had been using my financial support to subsidize discretionary spending, rather than covering basic necessities, felt like the final piece of a puzzle that revealed the true nature of their motivation. They weren't desperate people facing financial hardship. They were opportunistic individuals who'd found a way to live comfortably at my expense, while maintaining the pretense of victimhood. Why are you telling me that? I asked, grateful for his honesty, but curious about his motivations for betraying family confidences. Because what they're doing to you is wrong, David said firmly. Sarah and I have been watching you work incredibly hard to support them, while they criticize and dismiss your achievement. It's not fair, and it's not healthy for anyone involved. Does Sarah know about their discretionary spending? I asked, wondering about my sister's awareness of our parents' deception. She knows some of it, but they've been explaining it as occasional treats that they deserve after months of hardship, David explained. They've been very good at justifying their spending while maintaining the narrative that they're struggling financially. The conversation continued for another hour, with David providing additional details about my parents' actual financial situation and their strategic approach to maintaining my support. By the end of our discussion, I had a clear understanding of the calculated nature of their behavior and the extent of their deception. David, I want to thank you for telling me this, I said, as we prepared to leave the coffee shop. I know it wasn't easy to share this information, and I appreciate your honesty about what's been happening. You deserve to know the truth, David replied. And honestly, Sarah and I have been concerned about the impact this situation has been having on you. You've been incredibly generous with your family, and you deserve better treatment than what you've been receiving. The drive back to Ashley's apartment provided time to process the full implications of David's revelation. The picture that emerged from his information was one of calculated manipulation and exploitation, with my parents using emotional coercion and false narratives to maintain financial support while living comfortably at my expense. When I arrived at Ashley's apartment, I found her waiting with dinner and the kind of supportive presence that I'd come to value deeply over the past few weeks. She took one look at my expression and immediately knew that the day had brought additional revelations about my family's situation. What happened? She asked, guiding me to the couch and settling beside me with obvious concern. I recounted the events of the day, from my parents' appearance at my office to David's revelations about their true financial situation and manipulative strategy. Ashley listened with growing anger and disgust, her expressions reflecting the betrayal and disappointment I was feeling. Jessica, this is so much worse than we realized, she said when I finished the story. They're not just taking advantage of your generosity, they're running a systematic con game with you as the target. I keep thinking about all the times I defended them to you, I said, feeling foolish about my previous willingness to make excuses for their behavior. All the times I rationalized their criticism and dismissed your concerns about their treatment of me. You were being loyal and loving, Ashley said firmly, The fact that they were manipulating those qualities for their own benefit doesn't make you foolish, it makes them calculating and cruel. What do I do now? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the scope of the deception and the implications for my future relationships with my family. Now you make decisions based on the truth rather than the lies they've been telling you, Ashley said. You have complete clarity about their motivations and their actual financial situation. You can choose how to respond based on reality rather than manipulation. That evening, I spent hours processing the information David had shared and considering my options for moving forward. The revelation that my parents had been living comfortably while claiming financial desperation fundamentally changed my understanding of our relationship and my obligations to them. The following morning brought a text message from my mother that demonstrated the continued pattern of manipulation and guilt-inducing language that David had described. Jessica, your behavior yesterday was completely unacceptable. Creating a scene at your office and embarrassing your family in front of your colleagues shows how selfish and inconsiderate you've become. Your father and I are disappointed in the person you've turned into, and we expect you to come home immediately to discuss your responsibilities to this family. The message's complete lack of accountability for their inappropriate behavior, combined with the attempt to shift blame to me for their actions, represented exactly the kind of manipulation that David had warned me about. The fact that they characterized their scene creating as my fault demonstrated a level of gaslighting that I was no longer willing to tolerate. Instead of responding to their message, I decided to take proactive steps to protect my professional reputation and personal well-being. I called building security to ensure that my parents' access restrictions remained in place, and I began researching my legal options for addressing their use of my home as permanent residence without contribution or formal agreement. The morning also brought a follow-up call from Michael Thompson, who'd heard about the incident at my office through professional networks in the Phoenix business community. Jessica, I hope you don't mind me calling, but I heard about what happened at your office yesterday, Michael said, his voice carrying obvious concern. Jennifer and I wanted to make sure you're okay, and to offer our support if you need it. Thank you, I said, touched by their continued concern and support. It's been a challenging situation, but I'm managing with the help of good friends and professional focus. What your parents did was completely inappropriate, Michael said firmly. No one should have to deal with that kind of professional embarrassment and boundary violation. If there's anything Jennifer and I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. The conversation with Michael reinforced my growing network of supportive relationships based on mutual respect and genuine concern rather than manipulation and exploitation. The contrast between his approach and my family's behavior continued to illuminate the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationship dynamics. That afternoon brought another significant development when I received a call from a real estate agent who'd been recommended by Ashley. I'd been considering my options for my living situation, and the conversation with David had crystallized my understanding that my parents viewed my home as their permanent residence regardless of my own preferences or plans. Martinez, I understand you're considering your options regarding your home in Ahwatukee, the agent said. Based on the current market conditions and the information you provided, I believe we could achieve a very favorable sale price if you decide to move forward. The conversation about market values and sale timelines provided concrete information about my options for reclaiming control over my living situation and financial resources. The knowledge that I could sell my home quickly and at a profit gave me a sense of empowerment and control that had been absent from my family relationships for months. I'm not ready to make a decision immediately, I told the agent, but I want to understand my options and timeline if I choose to move forward with a sale. Of course, the agent replied. The market is very strong right now and properties in your neighborhood are selling quickly. If you decide to move forward, we could have the property listed and under contract within a few weeks. The information about my real estate options provided a sense of control and empowerment that extended beyond simple financial consideration. The knowledge that I could make independent decisions about my living situation, regardless of my parents' expectations or assumptions, represented a fundamental shift in my understanding of my own agency and autonomy. The week continued with intensive focus on my new responsibilities as senior director and the strategic planning that would define my success in the advanced role. The professional challenges and opportunities provided welcome distraction from family drama while reinforcing my capabilities and value in the business world. Friday afternoon brought a final revelation that would cement my understanding of my parents' true character and motivation. I was preparing to leave the office when Maria knocked on my door with an expression of barely contained anger. "Jessica, I'm sorry to bother you, but I just received a call that I think you need to know about immediately," she said, settling into the chair across from my desk with obvious agitation. "What happened?" I asked, concerned about her unusual emotional state. "Your mother called the main office number asking to speak with your supervisor," Maria explained. "She told the receptionist that she was concerned about your mental health and that she thought your boss should know that you were having family problems that might affect your work performance." The news that my mother had contacted my workplace to discuss my personal life and mental health felt like the ultimate boundary violation. She'd essentially tried to sabotage my professional reputation by suggesting that family conflicts were affecting my work performance. "What did the receptionist tell her?" I asked, dreading the answer. Fortunately, the receptionist followed protocol and declined to transfer the call or provide any information about your work performance, Maria said. "But she did take a detailed message, including your mother's claims about your mental state and her request that your supervisor contact her to discuss your situation." The calculated nature of my mother's attack on my professional reputation, her strategic attempt to create problems for me at work, represented a level of malicious manipulation that I'd never fully appreciated before. This wasn't concerned parental behavior. It was deliberate sabotage designed to force me back into compliance with their demands. "Did she leave her contact information?" I asked, wondering about the extent of her boundary violation. "Yes, she left her name and phone number and asked that Jennifer Walsh call her as soon as possible to discuss your situation," Maria confirmed. "She also mentioned that she was concerned about your financial management and decision-making ability." The revelation that my mother had been prepared to discuss my financial situation with my supervisor, potentially compromising my professional reputation and advancement opportunities, felt like the final confirmation of her willingness to harm me in service of her own agenda. "Thank you for handling this professionally," I said to Maria, grateful for her discretion and support. "I want to make sure that no one from my family has access to information about my work performance or professional situation. I'll make sure that all staff understand that no information about your work should be shared with family members, and I'll coordinate with reception to ensure that similar calls are handled appropriately." As I drove home that evening, I felt a strange mixture of anger, sadness, and clarity about the true nature of my family relationship. The pattern of manipulation, boundary violations, and calculated attacks on my professional reputation had revealed their character in ways that I could no longer ignore or rationalize. The weekend stretched ahead with the promise of continued distance from family pressure and the opportunity to make decisions about my future based on truth rather than manipulation. I had information about their actual financial situation, their long-term plans for my resources, and their willingness to sabotage my professional reputation to maintain control over my decisions. For the first time in months, I felt equipped with the knowledge and clarity needed to make fundamental changes in my relationship with my family, changes that would prioritize my own well-being and professional success over their demands and expectations. The journey toward complete independence and authentic relationships was just beginning, but I felt more confident in my ability to navigate it successfully than I had in years. The clarity I'd gained about my family's manipulative behavior crystallized into decisive action on Monday morning. I arrived at my office with a sense of purpose that had been absent for weeks, armed with information about their true financial situation and their calculated attempts to sabotage my professional reputation. The time for maintaining distance while hoping for change had passed. Now I needed to take concrete steps to protect my career and establish permanent boundaries. My first call was to Patricia Williams, a family law attorney who'd been recommended by Ash. Patricia specialized in cases involving financial exploitation and boundary violations within family relationships, and her reputation for strategic thinking and client advocacy had made her the obvious choice for my situation. Martinez, I've reviewed the information you provided about your family's situation, Patricia said during our phone consultation. What you're describing constitutes a clear pattern of financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. The fact that your parents have been living rent-free in your home while maintaining discretionary spending suggests they've been systematically taking advantage of your generosity. Her professional assessment of my situation provided the external validation I needed to move forward with legal protection. After months of questioning my own perceptions and wondering if I was being too harsh in my judgment, having an experienced attorney confirm that my family's behavior was problematic and exploitative gave me the confidence to take decisive action. I want to explore my options for requiring them to move out of my home, I told Patricia. I also need to understand how to protect myself from future financial demands and boundary violations. Arizona law is very clear about property rights, Patricia explained. As the sole owner of your home, you have every right to require other occupants to vacate with proper notice. Given that your parents have been living there without contributing financially, they're essentially tenants at will, which means you can terminate their occupancy with 30 days written notice. The knowledge that I had clear legal rights to reclaim my home provided a sense of empowerment that had been absent from my family relationships for months. For too long I'd been operating from a position of guilt and obligation, allowing my parents' emotional manipulation to override my own needs and boundaries. Within 2 hours of ending my call with Patricia, I had drafted a formal 30-day notice to vacate, requiring my parents to find alternative housing by February 5th. The document was professional, legally sound, and free from the emotional language that had characterized our recent communications. I was reclaiming my property and my independence through clear, decisive action, rather than endless negotiation and manipulation. The afternoon brought another significant step in my journey toward independence. I called the real estate agent Ashley had recommended and scheduled a consultation to discuss listing my home for sale. The decision to sell represented more than just a financial transaction. It was a symbolic break from the life I'd built around my family's expectations and demands. Based on current market conditions and comparable sales in your neighborhood, I believe we could list your property for $520,000, the agent explained during our meeting. Properties in Ahwatukee are selling quickly and I expect we could have you under contract within 2 weeks of listing. The potential profit from the sale, combined with my increased salary as senior director, would provide complete financial independence and resources to build a new life free from family manipulation. More importantly, the sale would eliminate my parents' assumption that they could continue living in my home indefinitely, while criticizing my choices and dismissing my achievements. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.